to tell you, I don't believe this car was blown in here. It looks like somebody tried to park this car next to this building to try to keep it as safe as possible. Obviously, not exactly the best idea. If you look around here, I want to see if you can see the windshield right there. Not sure if we can get a little bit more light in this shot right now, but that windshield completely broken, a cinder block sitting right on the hood of this car. This is obviously, I think, someone's intention to try to save their car from the very strong winds that were going to be in this area for Hurricane Irma. Obviously, though, this is serious damage here. And to this structure in of itself, too, I mean, I know that we're seeing the structure still standing, which is good news. And you can see the glass doors are perfectly fine. They have not been shattered. They have not even been scratched from what I can see. But to see the sign here, to see large chunks of actual what looks and feels like, to be honest, concrete, and this wood having completely come off this building.
Like war. It sounded like explosives. That is often from the brutal winds ripping through, of course. But it's not just the wind. It is the life-threatening storm surge that federal, state, and local officials are still warning of about this morning. We were just showing you some live pictures of Charleston, South Carolina, where this brutal storm is headed now. Now Tropical Storm Irma headed towards Charleston, South Carolina, and points north. They're just now starting to feel the first effects of Irma. My next guest is an expert on one of the big problems with this storm surge. Jamie Rome, he's a storm surge specialist with the National Hurricane Center. He's joining me right now. Jamie, I really appreciate you coming in, you jumping on. There are flash flood emergencies going on right now in Jacksonville with the St. Johns River right there, of course. We were talking to Kaylee Hartung about that. What does that mean for storm surge?
Well, that means you just have a very quick and immediate rise in the water levels that could be life-threatening for those in those areas, those folks in those areas. And you need to heed all local authorities and their directions in terms of protecting your life.
And Jamie, what does it mean to break records that we're expected to be seeing or have already been broken in places like Jacksonville? Chad Meyer says the storm surge in Jacksonville is breaking all sorts of records. The water surge in the St. Johns River is supposed to be the highest water surge since 1846. What does it mean to break a record like that?
So just like meteorological records where you keep over time, high temperatures and low temperatures, and you have record highs and record lows, we also keep historical accounts of water levels or how high water levels are measured within the given areas. And what that means is this particular storm is going higher than past flood events.
And in terms of storm surge, since this is the area where you are an expert on, where are you most concerned about storm surge next? I mean, we're seeing some effects in Charleston, South Carolina, winds whipping there. We're seeing, should Savannah be worried? Where are you watching?
So basically from points from Jacksonville northward through central South Carolina, the coastal regions, including Charleston, the worst is yet to be felt. So water levels are already starting to rise in Georgia and South Carolina. They'll probably continue to rise through this afternoon and evening. So that's sort of the next area working its way up the coast.
And of course, dangerous winds, Jamie, is something that folks easily understand, right? But can you explain, please, just one more time, what storm surge is, why it can be so dangerous?
So basically what happens is when you have a big storm, be it a hurricane or a winter storm, and you have strong winds, and the winds press across the ocean and push it towards the land. As the water hits the land, it has nowhere to go but up and over the land and inundate or wet normally dry areas.
Jamie Rome, an expert on this, watching this with us from the National Hurricane Center. Jamie, I really appreciate you jumping on our special coverage of Irma, the destruction that she's left in her path, where she is headed now as a tropical storm. Our special coverage continues ahead.
We will pass that information along. Guys, back to you.
All right, Olivia, thank you for that. We're starting to get an idea of some of the damage outside and now inside in Naples. Wink News anchor Channing Frampton is in Naples.
Yeah, the damage on the outside of the hotel and in the lobby area is pretty superficial, but if you go behind the scenes, it's actually a much different picture. Go through these doors, walk through this hallway, take a look at the floor. You can see these ceiling tiles that fell down. The staff was actually proactive. They put these trash cans in place to collect the water, which was raining down from the ceiling during the storm because the winds were so fierce and the rain was so heavy that the roof and the building, it was just too much to handle. I mean, you've got this major hurricane rain, of course you're going to have a few issues. And then back the hallway here, the water was dripping down through. This is a hallway that the staff had to get through to get to a ballroom where they were taking shelter. And the leaders here at the hotel actually made the decision to move the people who were staying in this ballroom to the upper floors during the height of the storm because they were worried about water coming down and getting them wet, and who knows what could have happened. But they are all safe. This ballroom is intact. We just have a little bit of water now to clean up here, and they say that that's one of their top priorities, is getting this water cleaned up. And I asked the general manager what he thought of the drill that they had in place to make sure that everybody was kept safe. Listen to what he said.
We did really well here. We figured out what could go wrong and had backup plans, and we actually drilled it with all our employees. And that's really helped us through the storm.
Unfortunately, damage like you're seeing here, that the ceiling and the wires and the tiles that fell down, it's relatively isolated from what we can tell. So it's not going to be major cleanup, but it's going to be cleanup. It's going to take some time. It's going to take patience. And I'm sure it's something that a lot of people across Southwest Florida are preparing for in the days and the weeks ahead. In North Naples, Channing Frampton, Wink News Now.
All right. Thank you very much, Channing.
Yeah, he's right about that. Wink News reporter Kim Powell's in a Fort Myers neighborhood where it looks like some houses there have been damaged. She filed this story a little while ago.
When we were sitting inside, hunkering down during the storm, I heard a certain shatter, and I knew that that was my fence. These fences just did not make it. I'm glad I moved my stuff inside. I had a hammock out here, I had a barbecue, had Adirondack chairs. Most of the stuff is inside, some of it's in the garage, but I'm definitely glad at this point that I didn't leave it out, because this fence definitely fell down. Looks like it goes all the way through, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 houses at least.
Did you pick on any water at the house?
No, none yet.
We took on some water.
Really?
Yeah, we got a nice stream coming down the bedroom.
Oh, that's not. What unit are you?
Right over in here.
Here's that tree. We passed this earlier. Looks like it took some heat there. Looks like some people lost part of their roofing. Yeah, looks like same thing we've been seeing. A lot of down fences. How's it going? What do we got going on? Drains clogged?
Yeah. Babe, look at those coming.
There you go.
For the storm, just stay there. Don't.
Is this a drain?
Yep. What is it? Oh, that's just a piece of lumber. Don't worry.
It's moving.
John Berman back in Miami. I'm standing in what was a mandatory evacuation zone, which did see enormous storm surge. Obviously, people coming back home right now to check out what they can. Another mandatory evacuation zone was Miami Beach, North Miami Beach. Joining me now is Major Richard Rand of the North Miami Beach Police Department. Major, first of all, you were a voice of incredible calm yesterday when we were in the midst of this storm, pounded hour after hour. So thank you for that. And now I've learned it wasn't just a calm voice. You have, a spine of steel. Your department did a rescue in the middle of the storm for a woman and a child in dire need. Explain what happened.
Sure. We got a call yesterday from a concerned neighbor about some floodwaters coming into a home. The floodwaters were about 3 feet high and rising quickly. At that time, the winds were extremely high. The leaves were blowing, branches were coming off the trees, power lines were falling down. I couldn't get my emergency squad out there in the police cars, and rescue couldn't respond. So right behind me is an emergency vehicle called an MRAP. I immediately deployed the MRAP with an extraction team, a medic. We responded to the area. We were able to get into the area, reach the front door, take out the 4-year-old infant and the mother, and take them to safe shelter. Incredible story.
It's incredible you were able to do that, and not to lecture here, because I'm thrilled for the woman and their child that are okay. But look, this is why there are mandatory evacuations, because there are these dangers, there are these perils, and had you not had the equipment you had, you might not have been able to get to her. Give me a sense of the need right now in North Miami Beach.
Well, I can tell you, John, reality has set in. Personally, I've been affected. For me, I got a phone call that there's a large oak tree down. Probably lost my house. From what my neighbors are telling me, I haven't been home in 4 days. So reality is setting in for first responders. But I'm here serving the citizens of North Miami Beach. My priority right now is to make sure that the people that I serve are safe. putting my needs secondary. Right now, we have a bunch of boots on the ground. We're doing a survey of the area. We have many power lines down. It's still very dangerous because there's a lot of water on the ground. God forbid people go outside, step in the water, get electrocuted. End of story.
You know, Major Richard Rand, North Miami Beach Police Department, I took my breath away what you just told me. You think you lost your house in the midst of this storm, even while you were sending people out to save others' lives, and you can't even go home to see because you still need to do your job. Major, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for what you do, and I can promise you, you are going to get an outpouring of support over the coming days so you can work through your own personal recovery as well. Thank you, Major. Kate, we're going to go back to you in New York. You know, I was on with him yesterday, you know, in the 70-mile-an-hour winds, and he was just as calm as he was right there. An amazing, amazing first responder, and I'm sure not uncommon.
I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. That took my breath away when he just kind of, as an aside, added that he thinks he may have lost his own home, but he has no way of knowing yet because he can't go home because obviously he's serving his community. It's truly amazing, and it speaks to just what our first responders are, the best and the brightest out there helping all of these communities in a time of need. Thank you to Mayor Rand, of course, and thank you, John, so much for being with us, being there for us throughout the hour, and all of your coverage over the weekend and bringing the stories and showing folks just really what was happening there in Miami. I really appreciate it. Folks are just now, as John's laying out for us, getting a first look of what damage Irma brought in parts of Florida. Points north are still feeling the effects as we speak. Our special coverage of Irma continues now with Inside Politics and John King here for us.
In the future, and that could bring the seas as high as 15 feet above their normal levels, and that is why they had this mandatory evacuation of zones A and B, because that water could come up anything below those levels. Zones A and Zone B essentially mean 15 feet above sea level and everything below that.
Jumped up
if the water
and said,
comes up,
something just broke. Yeah, well, it broke.
The Caribbean islands took Irma's most powerful punch. At least 3 dozen dead. Homes and businesses flattened.
For the families with us on this anniversary, we know that not a single day goes by when you don't think about the loved one stolen from your life. Today, our entire nation grieves with you, and with every family of those 2,977 innocent souls who were murdered by terrorists 16 years ago.
That was President Trump this morning, remembering 9/11. There were ceremonies at Ground Zero in New York, at that sacred field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and you just heard the president there at the Pentagon. We begin, though, with Tropical Storm Irma. Tropical Storm Irma now churning northward, also spreading west and east. A massive storm more than 400 miles wide, impacting millions of people in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and Alabama, still bringing storm surge, flash flooding, and punishing winds. For much of the southeast, this storm won't be packing the power it did over the Florida Peninsula this weekend, but Irma has affected every major city across that state, with the threat of flooding and dangerous winds forced a mass evacuation of more than 6 million people. Irma hit the Florida Keys as a Category 4 hurricane, leaving waters full of hazardous debris, and as you can see there, some loose boats. Officials there say bridges must be inspected for safety before anyone can return to the Keys by car. In Miami, winds were so strong, the roof of this small apartment building ripped away. For context, the sun is shining now in Miami. Farther up the western coast, Marco Island absolutely hammered with wind and rain. Some astounding video there. Winds like this can rip trees from the ground, snap power poles and power lines. Utility companies say more than 5.8 million homes and businesses have lost power. The head of FEMA says some won't get electricity back for weeks.
That's my bed.
Back in the Caribbean, most people don't know where to begin for the cleanup. You just saw there on the island of Tortola in the British Virgin Islands. At least 36 people have died across the Caribbean as the result of Irma. As we mentioned, no major city in Florida is escaping the wrath of this enormous storm. CNN's Kaylee Hartung is in Jacksonville, where there's severe flooding. Kaylee, tell us what you're seeing right now, and I can tell just by looking at the shot, the winds are picking up.
Yeah, John, severe flooding, historic flood levels already, and authorities say it will get worse, and these gusts that we expected, they continue to hit us. What's interesting to see, though, dry ground right here behind me. I'm in the middle of downtown Jacksonville outside the Omni Hotel, and you just have to swing a couple degrees around for this street to look like a boat landing right here in the middle of town as the waters of the St. Johns River flow up into downtown Jacksonville, right up Hogan Street, Water and International Streets to my left, a familiar block. If you're familiar at all with downtown Jacksonville, the Landing, a very popular watering hole, is now underwater. And this, John, is just the beginning. High tide here will be at 2 p.m., so authorities say these historic flood levels we're already seeing, they will continue to rise, maybe 4 to 6 feet above that high tide level here. Now here in downtown Jacksonville, you can't go east from here. You've got the south side and then the barrier islands of Jacksonville Beach and Ponte Vedra Beach, familiar vacation spots for many. But the bridges that go east, they are closed. They are closed to any traffic trying to go that way. Authorities doing all they can to get people off of those islands. Westbound traffic is allowed for any people who tried to ride out the storm there. First responders in position to make rescues if needed. We've learned from the sheriff's office here, they were making some waist-deep water rescues already today. But again, John, the caution as we see a fellow right here to my left with his cell phone out, observing this site downtown. The caution is still so high here, John, as you can see the wind gusts that I am feeling, and these water levels will continue to rise.
That's amazing. Just a few feet apart there shows you the unpredictability. Kaylee Hartung in Jacksonville, and as Kaylee just noted, important to remember the high tide is still a couple hours away. We'll keep an eye on Kaylee and the Jacksonville situation. Hurricane Irma has been historic by any measure. It's the strongest Atlantic hurricane ever recorded. It was a Category 5 storm for 3 days, remained at that highest level on the hurricane scale longer than any storm in the satellite tracking era. Packed sustained winds of 185 miles an hour for 37 hours. That's another record. Meteorologist Chad Myers joins us from the CNN Weather Center with the latest on Irma's path. Now a tropical storm, Chad, but walk us through what Florida has seen and what's next.
Well, it came on shore, John, very close to Cudjoe Key, which is just to the east of Key West, the Long Island chain there, called the Lower Keys. And then very close to Marco Island in Naples, and overnight just to the east of Tampa, west of Orlando. Right about here right now, the onshore flow still pouring into Savannah and Jacksonville and all the way into Charleston. Record flooding going on, as you just saw there. Records set back in 1860s when they started putting sticks in the bank to see how high the water was. So this was even higher. What you're seeing there on those last pictures, higher than Hurricane Dora in 1964, and certainly for Savannah and Tybee, higher than Matthew that we saw just simply last year. Here is the rain shield up here in Atlanta and Macon. Anywhere up there, you will see wind gusts today, 45 to about 60 miles per hour. That's the story, but it's the onshore flow, and even one tornado warning now just to the north there of Savannah. That's all, I guess, south of Charleston there. Somewhere there between those two islands we see, or those two resort areas, we do see the storm coming through here. Anytime you see one big cell, you could certainly see in the neighborhood of an EF1 or so tornado. We're watching a couple of things. We're watching the Jacksonville flooding. The Jacksonville flooding coming up the St. Johns because the water is now trying to get out of the St. Johns River. It is funneled through Jacksonville and then out to the ocean. It can't get through this choke point, and that's why it is flooding so badly right now. If I get rid of this, one more thing we're watching is pool video here. This is what is the stretch. This is from Homestead to Key Largo. We're following the track of this helicopter as it flies through. This, I believe, looks like Jewfish Creek. It is the highest part of this bridge. It is a bridge that used to be very, very low, and an opening and closing bridge. They finally fixed that and made it very high. It was a 3-lane road, a very dangerous road. Anybody could pass in the middle. And it was a dangerous stretch, as they called it, the stretch. And now it is a little bit safer because they did put a barrier in there. Now we're coming down here. This is going to be Key Largo. This is south. This right here is going toward Key West. They're now spinning around. This would be John Pennekamp State Park as we go up through here. Now we're going to continue to fly. As we fly this way, the numbers, the mile markers will get lower all the way until you get to 0, which will be Key West. We'll keep watching this. As they go farther, John, we're going to see more and more damage because we're getting closer and closer to the eye. And it cut out, but it'll be okay. It'll come back. They're just getting as far as they can, and then they'll get the gain back up on the helicopter. We're going to continue to watch it. I'm going to continue to tape it, and if I see anything significant, I'll jump back on for you.
You let us know, Chad. We'll get back to you if you see anything significant. I want to thank you as well for your marathon work throughout last week and through the weekend. Our viewers are certainly grateful for all your help and guidance. As Chad just noted, showing you the map, they're heading south toward the Florida Keys. People in the Keys were told they were on their own if they didn't evacuate, that no one would be there to pick up the phone if they called 911. Despite those warnings, Key Largo resident Tim Jones rode out the storm. He took some video during the storm. You see some of it here. He's been through plenty of hurricanes. Says Irma was the biggest. Tim joins us now on the phone. You've been through a half dozen of these, maybe 8 of them. Tim, why was Irma the biggest? Tell us about the peak moments.
Mainly it was just because she took so long to get through. Typically, 12 to 24 hours, and it's said and done. She was here for 3 full days. We had 24 hours of hurricane plus winds at the marina.
And when you got off, you live on a houseboat, if I'm right. You got off and took shelter in the marina. Give us the extent of the damage, or did you get off a little easier than you thought?
The marina building we stayed in is actually probably only 15 or 20 feet from the boats. So we were in and out all night long, checking on the boats, making sure they were okay. We lost a couple of the pilings that separate the boats, keep them in their slips. Fortunately, we were able to keep the boats from riding up on top of each other. So all the boats survived. I heard today one of them lost a mast, which is not bad. We lost a couple of sails. But otherwise, everything is good. We've got a lot of cleanup, a lot of debris, no power, no water, that kind of stuff.
People were told where you are, get out, that there would be no emergency services if you needed it during the storm. Why'd you stay?
You just kind of weigh the options. Like I said, the biggest thing is, these are our homes. We live on these houses, these boats, sailboats and cruisers. You weigh the options. Been through it before. We knew what kind of storm this marina could handle and keep the boat safe. This one was not predicted to be big enough that it was going to push it past that point. So you weigh the options. You do the math and go with the answer, and the answer was stay here. You better protect the boats, better protect yourself. Be here if you need to do something. Yeah, we're on our own now. We did manage to just score a pizza at a pizza place that opened up a few minutes ago, but yeah, the biggest problem right now is just finding, keeping cool, finding, basic services. But stuff's coming online. I want to give kudos to whoever it was, whatever agency it was that came to US 1 this morning and pushed all the debris off so we can at least travel on the highway again.
Right, and we're watching some live pictures as we speak, Tim. We're watching some live pictures of a helicopter flying over US 1, and we see the live pictures. We're at Key Largo right now. You mentioned a pizza place just opened up, but what from what you've been able to gather, what's the extent of the destruction, the damage in the area, and what's the biggest challenge at the moment?
The biggest challenge is just getting around. Most of the destruction we're seeing is related to the foliage, to the trees. There's a lot of trees down, a lot of branches down, fencing down. On the southbound side, which is the ocean side of US 1, carports and aluminum and stuff off of the trailers and that are on that side of the road. Most of the destruction is on ocean side. Bay side fared pretty well. Ocean side got hit really hard. One of our favorite places to eat down by the fisheries, the water's by 3 or 4 feet. A lot of flooding damage there. But like I say, mostly it's just debris and trash on the road at this point.
Tim, how many people rode it out at the marina?
There were 6 of us all together at our marina and 1 at the marina next door, so 7. A couple that left real late in the storm and just got back. Also, they didn't leave the island. They stayed on the island.
Tim Jones speaking to us from just close to Key Largo, Florida, where he rode out the storm. Tim, appreciate your time and your insights today. Certainly glad you made it safely through the tough weekend. We'll keep in touch. A quick update before we go to break. Florida's major airports remain closed today as authorities assess the damage while Irma makes its way north. Take a look at this. It's what the skies over southeast United States look like. That's a typical Monday. And then today, air traffic virtually shut down over Florida, most of Georgia. Irma already forced the cancellation of at least 12,000 flights. More of our coverage in just a moment. We'll be right back.
The little area that we've been through, just right here even, it's a little too deep for me to walk in. Obviously, this is a swale, but it's pretty flooded still. Now, Fowler, from what I can tell, we were not able to drive on most of Fowler, but Fowler is underwater. Fowler also has some lights hanging. From what I can tell, they still have those wired stoplights. So those stoplights are hanging right now, some of them. Most of the power's out, so obviously it's pretty dark out here, but just wanted to show you guys this. This is pretty unbelievable, and honestly, thank goodness it didn't fly completely off and hit the whole store. It could have been much worse. We still have a lot to assess in the morning. For now, I'll send
carport that came down. Storm. It's already passed us here, but that means that now it's coming right off the Gulf. We just found this sign here. Look at the sign is down here. I don't know what it says. Ha! Look at that. Strong current. Danger. No joke. This is the storm surge now. Coming in. You know, we weren't getting surge yesterday, and not only weren't we getting surge, we were getting a sucking effect of the water out of the bays and out of this pass that maybe you can't see because it's dark, but all the water got sucked out of it. Well, now, as you can see, that's what they call storm surge. It is now surging back in because we're getting we're getting a wind right from the Gulf, right from the west, as the backside of this storm comes through and it counter-rotates, it counterclockwise rotates. Now we're getting it right in the face off the Gulf. That's pushing this water, and I don't know, Bob, can you walk over here with me? It's pushing the water through this pass and into the bays. So listen, we're not done with this yet. It's not going to be as catastrophic as it was in the Keys by any means, or even in Naples. But I tell you, we're not done with this storm yet. It's still wailing pretty good, as you can see.
It is indeed. It's still a Category 1. And, Jeff, do they have any estimate now what the storm surge might be? Because they had said it might be 5 or 10 feet, which would be a big problem.
It would be a problem. I don't think we're going to get that intensity because, again, we're on the backside of the storm. But at the same time, you know, as you can see, I don't know, Bob's, he come up. Oh, whoa, that's sand there. I don't know if he can get up here. Can you get up on top of it, Bob, if you can? Will you showing me other? Oh, there you are. Sorry. There you go. I got your hand. Okay. Yeah, he's up on his knees. Sorry. But look, here's the surge coming into the rocks here. Now, typically, yesterday, you could see sand out there. Now, you can see water. This is where it typically would be. But we're just now starting to get the surge in here. So where it goes from here, I don't know. As I said, I don't think, Steve, it'll be as intense as if we had gotten a direct hit from this, since this is the backside.
Jeff, what about high tide? Is it already?
Yeah, that's this morning. That's okay. The other factor. I'm glad you brought that up because that is the other factor. We're expecting high tide here between 6 and 9, depending on where exactly you are along the coast in the Tampa Bay area. And just so you know, for those who don't know what Madeira Beach is, this is a barrier island that is off St. Pete, which is, of course, east of Tampa. So Tampa is actually a little bit protected. It's these barrier islands that are going to take the bulk of the crap here.
How did you get there? Is there a bridge?
Yeah, well, there are bridges, and, you know, well, you probably can't see it because it's behind me, but there's a bridge that goes from Madeira Beach across to Treasure Island, for those who may know the geography down here. And there are bridges to all of this, and those bridges, even though they've cut them off to, you know, regular folks, fools like us, they'll let us in. So, yeah, the bridges are open.
The bridges are open, and so is Jeff Flock describing what's going on down there in Madeira Beach. in the Tampa-St. Pete area.
Right. Jeff, it's okay to put your hood on now. Thank you very much.
And that was just recently.
Again, at 7 p.m. tonight. It goes through 7:30 tomorrow morning. The county superintendent has come out via Twitter and a news conference and said that schools are now closed for the foreseeable future. They had initially said schools were closed Friday.
Walk us through what the military is doing to help deal with the impact of Irma.
Sure, John. You know, most of these are National Guard activated by the governor at this point. But what is taking shape behind the scenes is the possibility of a very significant military operation, in fact, involving the Pentagon. The aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln and several other ships have now arrived or are arriving shortly off the coast of Florida and getting ready to hopefully start operations to help in southern Florida and in the Florida Keys. Now, let me pause and remind everyone, the U.S. military, of course, never would just march into some community in the United States. It has to all be worked through the governor, state and local authorities to offer that military assistance and to have it approved by state and local authorities. It's expected that that will come. Final signature on the dotted line, not just yet, but everyone's looking towards that. And what we are looking at is dozens of helicopters off of these ships beginning to start aid flights into these areas, bringing in whatever is needed, food, water, supplies. There are hundreds of military medical personnel on standby. They can bring them into these areas, especially down in the Keys, to help with hospitals and medical care, perhaps not being available there for time until power's restored and things can get back moving. Now, these ships themselves are already running into heavy seas and high winds, but they are expected to be on station off southern Florida, ready to begin operations as soon as later today. In the Caribbean islands, the U.S. military is wrapping up an effort, we're told, to evacuate Americans out of the Virgin Islands. They've already evacuated about 2,000 American citizens out of there. They expect to finish up that part of the operation as soon as today. All attention now on southern Florida and the Florida Keys to see where the military can work with the state and local authorities and step in. They are even looking at the prospect of opening up some small airfields in southern Florida so they can get closer to where people need the help and get it to them even faster. John?
Barbara Starr, live at the Pentagon, a reminder of the diversity of the missions faced by the men and women of the armed services. Barbara, appreciate it very much. And as members of the National Guard jump in to help those in need, listen here. Listen to this guardsman describe conditions while trying to rescue Florida residents whose homes were flooding.
We had our trucks, they were overflowing, and we couldn't even get further back there.
How were you able to get the families out? You used the boats?
I got out on foot.
On foot?
Joining us on the phone now, Senior Master Sergeant Nick Seibel. He's with Oregon's Air National Guard. He's at Hurlburt Air Base in Florida, arrived shortly before Irma hit. Senior Master Sergeant, just start. Tell me, what's mission number one today?
Well, first off, John, thanks for having me talk today, and our thoughts and prayers are with the people in the path of Hurricane Irma. Right now, we early this morning, about 6 o'clock Central Time, we sent out 2 California helicopters with a C-130 and trail, giving it gas while in flight to get an airfield team and a rescue team on the ground at Marathon Airport to do an assessment and make communications with the county emergency manager and start reaching back via satellite communications due to all of these cell networks and landlines currently being down back there. So they are routing all of that information of the critical needs of all of the medical supplies, food, water, shelter, gas, all of that stuff is being routed through us at this operations center here in Hurlburt Field, and we are working diligently to get all of this stuff ready to help those people out. Our airfield team down there is currently doing an assessment of Marathon and helping the what we have right now, the report is roughly 150 firefighters and our guys down there are clearing the airfield of debris and getting it ready to receive what whether it be military aircraft or civilian aircraft, to bring in all these much-needed supplies for the people that are affected.
And do you have any sense, both Marathon and Key West airports are on your mission list, any sense of when they will be ready?
We've got the initial reports that they should be ready to receive aircraft in the next couple of minutes, whether it be 15 or 30 minutes. We are still waiting to make communications with the Federal Aviation Administration to make sure they are ready to start receiving aircraft at those locations.
That's quick progress. We applaud the work. And when you mentioned getting in, maybe it's medical supplies, maybe it's food and water. From the radio traffic this morning, what's the greatest need and where?
It's just to the from the reports that we got to the north of the southernmost key, from mile marker pretty much 10 to mile marker 50. They are in serious need of. We've gotten a request for some antibiotics, IV fluids and starter kits, gas and diesel, some highly trained paramedics, and some pallets of food, water, and other humanitarian supplies.
And Senior Master Sergeant, you're from the Oregon Air National Guard. Do you have any hurricane experience in the past, or is this a first?
Well, to be honest with you, about a week ago, I was in Houston for Harvey.
What's the biggest difference?
I think, the biggest difference this one is there's a lot more debris and damage that we're helping take care of. And last week was obviously just a volume of water that was coming on the mainland.
And you mentioned the 2 helicopters up this morning. They're available for search and rescue. Is that the idea, or just for whatever you get incoming for requests for need?
So right now, they are working with the county emergency manager, and they are providing search and rescue operations from about that mile marker 10 to mile marker 50. So they have pararescuemen on board their aircraft that have the ability to be hoisted down to any person that is in need and assess their situation and either hoist the affected personnel to safety or help coordinate whatever they need at that location.
Senior Master Sergeant Nick Seibel of the Oregon Air National Guard. Sir, thank you for your service and thank you for everything you're doing. It's a tough story when you see these pictures of all the destruction and the like, but it's also heartwarming to hear people volunteering, and you're doing a military service down there now helping people out. Please thank everybody involved with your operation down there and keep in touch as we go through. And before we go to break, millions of Floridians without power, but one of the companies responsible for restoring it says they're going to unprecedented lengths to get the lights back on.
During the eye wall, I should say, and it was absolutely intense. It was my first hurricane growing up in West Texas, working in Indiana. I've never seen anything like this, and like you guys said, I've now experienced my first hurricane, so this place now feels like home.
There you go,
Good.
Andrew.
Yep.
Welcome home.
Welcome home. Now, hopefully, we'll find a new way to welcome people
Yeah,
from this point forward.
I know.
But I'm
It's
glad
got to be
that-
a nicer way.
I'm glad that worked.
Streets for this reason, because the wind is howling and stuff is starting to fly around now.
So you've got high winds, heavy rain, millions without power, and then you've got to worry about tornadoes as well. Brutal, huh, Rick?
Yeah. It certainly can be, and we hope that we don't see any more of those in this area. But, the power is obviously a huge concern. They have had thousands of people lose power here in this county, but the winds haven't been that bad here yet. And we do have a lot of power crews in this hotel, in fact, that are on standby, ready to roll as soon as the worst of the storm goes by. They're going to have a lot of work to do in the days and weeks ahead.
Wow, that's good to know. All right, Rick Leventhal, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and you can really hear the wind whipping around him, and you see that light there dangling, sort of emblematic of everything that's going on in the state of Florida. And look at that water flying across the bottom of the screen, really whipping from side to side.
A massive storm lashing the state of Florida. We are live throughout the night as Hurricane Irma continues to pound the state of Florida from coast to coast.
Reporter Nicole Valdez, who is in Lee County. And Nicole, how are you doing there?
Lola,
Lois, we just stumbled upon a pretty dangerous area here on McGregor Boulevard. We really want to warn you guys about because we've had a number of drivers try to drive through this. You see this right here? This is a downed power line, and it is stretching the middle of McGregor Boulevard right now, almost near Colonial right now. You can see these neighbors. Well, don't play with that, sir. That's probably not the best idea. You can tell at least he's not being injured because the power is out in this neighborhood. So this power line is not live right now, which is the good news because it's not nearly as dangerous. But obviously, if you drive through here pretty quickly and you don't see it, you could get it attached to your car, your bike. Obviously, you know, neighbors out here are pretty aware. They've been telling us they've been trying to help direct cars for the last hour or so out here. But this is still a pretty dangerous situation, and one that people are really trying to make sure that everyone knows about. Now, you can see the wind is still a little bit high right now, but again, we are at the end tail of this storm, so everything is not as bad as definitely what we were seeing earlier today. We did speak to a couple of neighbors who are now out walking their dogs kind of after the storm, wanting to look at all the damage, and they said that it was definitely scary being in their house. They live right on this straight side of McGregor here, which was part of one of the mandatory evacuations here in Lee County. So I asked them, why did you choose to stay? They said they did not want to evacuate. They had 3 dogs, they had their family, and they felt safer inside their home. And today, like they said, no damage inside the home, which is the good news, but it was scary. They did see a lot of trees moving around. Some were breaking. There was pieces of a neighbor's roof, they said, that was coming crashing down onto the driveway. So different stories we are now hearing as the storm has now passed in this area. But places like this, and you can see things left behind like this power line, just one of the many dangers on the roads. We do not suggest driving at this hour. This is not the best idea. First of all, because there's no power, so the street lights are not on. It is very dark out here. We've been trying to make it our way back up to the station over by downtown Fort Myers, and it's been a challenge for us, obviously. We're taking it as slow as we can and trying to be as safe as possible, but of course, it's probably best to wait till the morning when you can really see what's going on here. And if you're wanting to look at the damage, I mean, you'll probably get a much better look once the sun rises in the morning. Guys.
Very, very good. She has been able to get back outside for a time. And Morgan, tell us about the water levels. Remember the first time we were talking to you and all the water was being sucked out? Have you had a chance to go back and check how the water levels are right now?
Lois, we're just over by the edge of the Peace River to take a look at the water levels, and it looks like it might be coming in a little bit, but they were way...
When Irma hit Florida, hit the Keys first. CNN's Bill Ware is in Key Largo, I believe on the Atlantic side, Bill, trying to assess the damage there. What are you seeing?
Well, John, we're starting to just get the first glimpses of the devastation, which only gets worse going south. We're in Key Largo. Here's the story. We're running on fumes. There's no gas here. The roads are cut off because they have to inspect the bridges. An Instagram angel heard my call for help named Shirley. She said, hey, my friend Catherine's dad has some gas in his shed. That's the shed back there. After climbing over the roof of the neighbor's house, which came off of that mobile home, those angels bought us a few more hours of live shots because these days our car is our home and our office, but you get a sense of just one of the homes here, and this scene is repeated in an apocalyptic streetscape here in a neighborhood called Blinken and Nod. This is around mile marker 97. That's a gauge distance in this part of the Keys here, and just about every home we've seen it's sustained some damage. You know, the mobile homes, obviously more than others, the post-Andrew heavy stone construction seem to survive pretty unscathed, at least up here. But we're dying to get down south to the lower Keys. But the Florida Department of Transportation has to inspect all the bridges before they're going to open up US 1. And since there are 43 islands, John, you can imagine what a huge job that is. So people hoping to get back to the Keys, patient in the Keys this winter, he may have to wait a while. Somebody who just came by to assess the damage of her friend's house is Tiffany McNew. Good to see you. Come on over. How are you?
Good. How are you?
This is incredible. I mean, we're still absorbing it. You live down here. What was the storm like? What's your impressions of the damage?
It's really crazy. A lot of people's houses are damaged pretty badly. The water came up pretty high in a lot of areas. Our house, thankfully, we were up high and never reached our house there, but our roof is leaking real bad. We got, a lot of people have a lot of devastation here.
Will you show me the tattoo on your arm? That's the last card your father sent you before he passed away last summer, and he worked on the 7 Mile Bridge, I think he told me.
He did. He was the project engineer for the 7 Mile Bridge.
And you stayed because he would have stayed, you told me.
Yeah, he would have stayed. He bought a house down here in Key Largo, and he said it's a concrete fortress, and he's never leaving if there's a hurricane, and
yeah.
That's where I stayed, and my boyfriend and I, we stayed there. We're safe, you know?
Well, I have to say, just in the last hour, I've had 2 complete strangers give me precious gasoline. Everybody seems to be neighborly. They're banding together. It's one family down here in the Keys. Do you think that will rebuild this place?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's already happening. A boat in one of the marinas up a couple miles north of here, the Key Largo Princess came loose and knocked into a bunch of the charter boats, and all the guys that stayed behind went out to help save each other's boats, you know, from sinking and all that other stuff. So everybody's coming together to really try and save our community here. So
Godspeed to you in the recovery. Thanks for visiting with us. Condolences about your father. I know he'd be proud of you.
Thank you very much.
So, John, you can see here some of the boat damage. Just about all the vessels here on the Atlantic side were heaved up by that storm surge as Irma came ashore about at Cudjoe Key. What is that, Tiffany? What mile marker is Cudjoe?
About
26, so we're at 97, so 60-plus miles from here. So we're going to do our best to bring you as many stories as we can here while we look for a boat or a plane or any sort of transportation that can get us further down to the lower Keys, because we hear about people in shelters. We hear about folks down in Key West we're really anxious to check up on. But until then, I'll send it back to you in New York or Washington.
Safe travels, Bill, as you keep going south. And our thanks, we join you in thanking those angels helping you out with some fuel along the way. Bill Ware for us in Key Largo. We're going to try to keep going south to see the situation further and further south toward Key West. Thank you, Bill. Thousands of people across the Caribbean are facing a staggering amount of damage. Irma hit many of the islands as a Category 5 hurricane, killing at least 36 people and flattening entire towns. The governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands called it a horrific disaster. Elizabeth Smith was on the island of St. Croix when the storm rolled in. She joins me now on the telephone. Elizabeth, St. Croix got off a bit easier than St. Thomas and St. John. Tell us your current situation, and you've been trying to coordinate and communicate with your friends who are on St. Thomas and St. John. What's the situation? Elizabeth Smith, can you hear me?
Hello?
Elizabeth, it's John King in Washington. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you now just fine. You're on St. Croix, which my understanding was the least damaged by Irma. But tell us your situation, and you've also been trying to keep in touch with friends on St. Thomas and St. John. Give us the latest on, A, the devastation and destruction, and B, the urgent needs now.
Sure, I'm on St. Croix here. As you said, we're fortunate to have not been hit as hard as St. Thomas and St. John, although we do still have areas that have not had power. I have friends on St. Thomas, friends on St. John that have very limited access to power, access to cell service. I've only heard very few text updates from them. I know that they're alive, but I don't know the current situation of what they're going through day to day. I have heard very terrifying posts on Facebook of people that are still not accounted for, elderly people that are stuck in their homes, children that cannot get the help that they need, and it's just very frightening.
And when you talk about very frightening, in those that you have been in touch with, you mentioned it's hard to communicate, most have no power. Have they given you any information about this situation when it comes to food, water, vital supplies?
They are having to walk to find FEMA trucks. They have been able to find FEMA trucks to pick up food rationings, but it is my understanding that you have to be present in order to get your rations. If you are sick or if you are pregnant and you have to stay home, then I understand that there is some trouble getting the food that you need.
And the hospital in St. John, I believe there's only one, faced some pretty significant damage. What do you know about that?
Yes, it was actually the hospital on St. Thomas, and during the storm, they faced catastrophic difficulties, and while the storm was was going on, they were having to evacuate patients from the first floor to higher floors because they were receiving a lot of flooding.
And Elizabeth, how would you rate the communication from local officials about where to get help, where to get supplies, how to be in touch with law enforcement if you needed that help?
Yes, they have been very receptive. I've been seeing posts, updates almost daily from the governor and giving us information on where to go. The problem is the lack of cell service and the lack of power.
Elizabeth Smith joining us from St. Croix. Elizabeth, thank you for touching base with us and sharing your story. Good luck keeping in contact with your friends there. Hope the situation improves and improves quickly. Anguilla is a small British territory, lies directly east of Puerto Rico. It found itself in Irma's crosshairs. At least 90% of government buildings and businesses described as badly damaged, including the island's only hospital and high school. Its radio station knocked off air by the storm. But reporter Nisha Dupuy stayed on the air using her phone. And look at this, a selfie stick.
We're here at Radio Anguilla. Our signal is now down. Hurricane Irma, it seems like she's still approaching us, but with force so strong. Many of the shutters are being blown down. We are being flooded, even within the radio station.
Nisha joins us now on the telephone. Let me start by applauding your ingenuity. 19 years old, that's pretty impressive to keep on. Tell us right now, what's the biggest worry, biggest concern on Anguilla?
The biggest concern on Anguilla at this time is definitely sourcing essential supplies for persons who have been so badly affected by Hurricane Irma. I mean, there are children, mothers and children who are now left homeless due to the damage done here by Hurricane Irma. So water, basic supplies, food, clothing is also very important. The electricity company predicted that we are to be out of electricity for a substantial amount of time. So generators are also very handy at this time. Because we are in survival mode, basic supplies are most essential right now.
And Nisha, your mother works as a nurse at the local hospital. Describe the situation there. I understand it was heavily, heavily damaged.
Yes, I remember receiving a voice note from her sometime after 5 after 6, and she was just letting me know that the roof was being blown away and they were experiencing flooding. Now imagine you're separate from your family at this time, and you're having this influx of messages coming in, the terror that runs through your body when you not only think of your mother, but you think of the patients, you think of the other nurses who are risking their lives just to be able to help other people. But yes, the one hospital on the island of Anguilla, the Princess Alexandra Hospital, has been badly affected. The roof at the maternity ward are completely blown off. They sustained a severe damage due to Hurricane Irma.
We just showed the pictures there you sent in to us of the hospital. That's amazing destruction there. How about communications from officials about where to get key supplies or where to get medical attention if you need it? How's that going?
Well, right now it really is a community effort. Everyone is uniting and sharing information. Social media is a showway. You are able to get Wi-Fi. Also, radio is up. So they are communicating. The National Center, the National Operations Emergency Center, they're relaying information very heavily to the local radio station. I recently volunteered as the public information officer. So we're just trying to get as much press releases as possible. Right now, even as we speak, there's a Red Cross station outside of the police station where people are able to come and get essential supplies. There are also different efforts being made, relief efforts, and something as simple as charging ports come in so crucially at this time. So there are people who are just setting up charging points outside of their establishment just so people could come and get their electronics charged up, just to be able to stay connected with what's happening. In terms of government officials, I am aware that they have been coming over and doing interviews. Communication is an issue because, yes, service, phone lines, but I believe that everyone is doing their best to keep everyone informed, even under these dire circumstances.
Nisha Dupuy, we appreciate your time today. We also appreciate, again, your ingenuity and tenacity to stay in touch on the tiny island of Anguilla, 35 square miles. You see the pictures of the devastation. We wish you the best in the days and weeks ahead. Thank you very much for your time today. Up next, we check in on another Florida community hit hard by Irma.
From what we can tell, so it's not going to be major cleanup, but it's going to be cleanup. That's going to take some time. It's going to take patience, and I'm sure it's something that a lot of people across Southwest Florida are preparing for in the days and the weeks ahead. In North Naples, Channing Frampton, Link News Now.
All right, thank you very much, Channing.
Yeah, he's right about that. Link News reporter Kim Powell's in a Fort Myers neighborhood where it looks like some houses there have been damaged. She filed this story a little while ago.
When we were sitting inside, hunkering down during the storm, I heard a certain shatter, and I knew that that was my fence. These fences just did not make it. I'm glad I moved my stuff inside. I had a hammock out here, I had a barbecue, had Adirondack chairs. Most of the stuff is inside, some of it's in the garage, but I'm definitely glad at this point that I didn't leave it out, because this fence definitely fell down. Looks like it goes all the way through, so it goes for 1, 2, 3, 4 houses at least.
You took on any water at the house?
No, none
yet.
yet.
We took on some water.
Really?
Yeah, we got a nice stream coming down the bedroom.
Oh, that's not. What unit are you?
Right over in here.
Here's that tree. We passed this earlier. Looks like it took some heat there. Looks like some people lost part of their roofing. Yeah, looks like same thing we've been seeing. A lot of down fences. How's it going? What do we got going on? Drains clogged?
Yeah. Babe, look at them. Look at those coming.
There you go.
For the storm, just stay there. Don't.
Is this a drain?
Yep. What is it? Oh, that's just a piece of aluminum. Don't worry.
It's moving.
We can ready both sides now.
Perfect. Nice. Well, the good thing is that now that the strongest of winds have gone away, watch out for the speed bump there. Now that the strongest winds have gone away, it's cleanup time, and people are not hesitating because it sounds like some people even have water into their house. So clearing up these drains, really important, because now look at this street. It's not flooded anymore. So it's a start. There's only so much you can do in the dark.
There you go. Fantastic.
Well, kind of consistent with what Adam was saying, we're seeing the greatest intensity that we have seen yet from the storm in this hour, and it looks like it's going to stretch throughout the hour. I could ballpark some of the winds at maybe 75 miles per hour or less as far as what we have seen here in the Ybor City, the historic district of Tampa, but I'm not seeing a whole lot in the way of destruction. If you look behind me here, you can see a lot of debris in terms of palm fronds on the road. There's a newspaper box that has been knocked over. But also, as you look down the street, you can notice one thing: the lights are still on. We've seen the lights flicker a couple times as this storm has progressed, but we haven't seen a major power outage. And looking around here, you can see a whole lot more in the way of minor debris that has been knocked onto the road. We've got a little bit of wind picking up right now. But if this is as bad as the wind event gets, I think you're going to have a lot of city leaders and county leaders out here in this area quite happy at phase 1 of this storm. But the problem is, it's only phase 1, as they have been warning all along. When the wind event's over, the danger isn't over. The problem isn't over. And they don't want people to look at phase 1 in terms of the impact on that we've seen thus far in Tampa. And I should also say, what we have seen thus far in Tampa is only what we can see through a microcosm. You can't really get out and do a broad survey of the damage until the storm clears. And that's part of what the authorities are saying. Let them get out, do the survey, see if there's damage, see if there's down power lines, if there are other dangers in these neighborhoods before people want to return from the high ground that they have sought, from the shelters. It's unpleasant for the poor people who are in the shelters, and anybody who is away at a friend's house, some higher ground. Of course, the foremost in their mind is going to be, how well did my house do? They want to get home and look at their belongings, but the authorities out here are saying, give it a little while. let us make sure that the storm has cleared. Let us make sure that the worst has passed, and let us make sure that it is safe before you come back and get a look. But it's too early to say that they have dodged a bullet out here by a long shot, and certainly not throughout the state. But the wind event that we're seeing right now, if this is as intense as it gets, it's not going to be as devastating as people had predicted or had feared, I guess would be a better way to put it. We've still got a little while with the wind intensity to say that we've seen the worst of the wind event, but we're watching it now. Minimal destruction from our perspective. You still have the flooding event in the future, guys.
All right, Mike Tobin reporting from Tampa, and real quickly, Mike, one of the good things that we've seen through this process is the fact that this storm was downgraded and was starting to break apart, not totally, of course, but started breaking apart as it made landfall down there in the Florida Keys, and then that's helped them in terms of what they're anticipating to arrive in Tampa, as opposed to getting a full Category 3 or Category 4 strength hurricane. So that's a remarkable turn of events, and a good turn of events for the people in Tampa.
I would agree. And I think you had a lot of people, hoping for the best, planning for the worst. And you had these evacuations, mandatory evacuations in the low-lying areas. And the threat there still hasn't dissipated. You've still got the storm surge potential off in the future. And that could bring the seas as high as 15 feet above their normal levels. And that is why they had this mandatory evacuation of zones A and B, because that water could come up anything below those levels. Zones A and Zone B essentially mean 15 feet above sea level and everything below that. If the water comes high, you're going to have structures that are below the water. You're going to have a lot of damage, all the different problems that come along with it. So they still, it's too late to minimize this, or too early, I should say, to minimize this storm. And it certainly is too early for people to come home, and that is what the authorities out here have been saying. If you're under evacuation order, it's tough to do. Everybody wants to go home. Everybody wants to see what happened. Wait it out for a little while longer, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
And that is very important, a very important message, because as we are going into these hours of darkness, for Floridians, it is a very dangerous time. And the worst of Irma's fierce winds and rains are now thankfully behind them in some places as that storm moves north along the west coast of their state. But as Mike Tobin just said, it's not to say that many dangers spawned by the hurricane are over. Now we talk to Steve Harrigan, who's in Naples, which was pummeled Sunday afternoon by the storm. I watched you all afternoon, Steve. Incredible coverage to watch you go through all of that. Tell us about the threats that the community still faces. It looks a little calmer than what we saw earlier today for you.
Thanks, Laura. Good team here to keep the signal up. Right now, the mayor of Naples has just said that city has largely been spared by the storm. There were really catastrophic predictions about what could happen here with a 10 to 15-foot storm surge. By moving slightly to the east, those predictions, fortunately, did not happen. There has been, though, significant damage from the winds. Sustained winds of more than 130 miles per hour for more than half an hour here in the Naples area has caused a lot of damage. Just from our small vantage point of walking around a couple blocks during the eye of the storm, you could see a number of trees snapped in half, even some large trees pulled up from the ground. Some structural damage to houses as well, a lot of roofs torn off, but not the catastrophic home smashing damage that we've seen in some other storms. So the mayor's saying things are largely spared, and they're still really getting a handle on just what the damage is. There is no power, no electric power for about 200,000 out of 210,000 clients in Collier County. So it's really a dark and rainy night for most people here. Even at this hour, with the conditions going down a little bit here, it's enough for sheriffs and firefighters to go out and to try and clear the roads. That's priority one, trying to get the trees and the power lines off the road to be able to assess the damage, rescue anyone who needs help, and be able to get people to hospitals. That's what's going on right now. 12 inches of rain here, also creating some flooding. We saw 2 to 3 feet of flooding in some areas where we were tomorrow, and we expect to see some further damage in the morning when they get a clearer assessment of just how hard this storm has hit the Naples area. Laura, back to you.
Steve, a quick question for you. How is the temperature? I was watching Bill Hemmer earlier in Orlando. He was talking about how it was warm and muggy during the day, and then suddenly when the storm was coming through, it dropped. He got really cold. He was talking about a 15-degree difference. What's it like where you are right now?
It's pretty cool right now, windy with a light rain coming in. There were some remarkable changes throughout the day. These storms often come in bands, so it can change dramatically from a light drizzle to just a rain that can almost knock you over. And most stunning of all is that 45 minutes of the eye when it goes from dark to light and real torrential rains and 130-mile-an-hour winds to perfect calm, and the birds come out for a few minutes. So a lot of variety as a storm like this passes through.
Steve Harrigan for us. Thank you, doing such an excellent job. Some of the best reporting out there. Thank you, Steve. And joining us now on the phone, we want to turn to State Senator Gary Farmer, who represents Broward County, an area just north of Miami along the eastern coast of Florida. Senator, I understand you've actually evacuated to Tallahassee, and you've moved around a few times with all of this in your evacuation plans. Is that right?
Yeah, Laura, I seem to be a little bit of a hurricane magnet. So next time we're just going to head to Alabama and hunker down there. So.
Richard Dennis Allen.
Richard.
East of US 1 down in Broward County, and we were a mandatory evacuation zone as of Thursday, so we got out of there. And then, of course, the storm shifted, and it looks like the East Coast, is avoided certainly a direct hit and the brunt of the storm, and now we're starting to get good reports, positive reports out of Naples and some of the West Coast, too, that some of the worst fears were not realized. So fingers crossed. These things are so unpredictable. You just don't know where they're going to end up. And it's frustrating for some people, I know, when you evacuate and it doesn't, end up being a direct hit. But, better safe than sorry.
And when you go to an area where you thought it was going to be safe and then you're being told to evacuate again, I wanted to ask you how things are going in your county that you represent, Broward County. Obviously, you have a large population there, and while there wasn't that direct hit that a lot of people feared, there are reports of power outages, and I read that 911 centers lost power today, boil water orders in some places. What else can you tell us about that?
All that is correct. We did get the back end, that dirty side, as they call it, of the storm. Very significant winds, lots of tornadoes reported in Broward County, unfortunately. So that's caused some significant problems. We do have the boil water alert. We are on curfew right now. That curfew is going to be reviewed in the morning, I know, by our county commission, and may be lifted by noon or thereabouts. But Broward County's got about 400,000 people, I think, 700,000 people, if my last report is accurate, without power. FDNL is doing a good job. They've put their assets in strategic places, and they're ready to come in and fix these transponders and the other things that have to get going. But, yeah, Broward County certainly has taken a lot of, and that's a perfect example of how these storms are so unpredictable, and even at the back end, when you're not on a direct hit, you can still suffer big damage.
I'm so glad it wasn't so bad for you guys, and we do want to keep checking in with you as we continue to monitor the situation. Florida State Senator Gary Farmer, I want to thank you for your time. Sorry to cut you short, but I appreciate you being with us here tonight.
Thanks, Laura.
All right. And for millions of Floridians, there will be no calm after the storm.
Indeed not. When we come back, the daunting task of mending so many tattered lives in the wake of the storm. We'll talk to someone who's willing and ready and able to lend a helping hand.
Well, take a look. Still these strong winds, and take a listen. We're still hearing those howls, but I want to give you guys some good news, okay? I've been using this dock, that palm tree down there. I know you can't see much, but I've been using it as reference. This dock's probably about a foot up. That palm tree I've been referencing, that water, the storm surge water, has still not crossed it. So this is good news for us. We're still not seeing that surge water come up. Good news for a lot of people who have been asking me, Facebook messaging me, and trying to reach out to get some updates on this. But let's move over here. I want to show you what we're also seeing. We're seeing a lot of debris. This is also why we are under cover here, because look at all those coconuts that have fallen. And take a look up. Those winds are still kicking up, so it's still not safe out there for you guys to head out. Look at that palm tree swaying and bending.
Now, I know you can't see much out here, but I do want you to take a look at some video that we shot earlier of those storm surge waters, just so you can see what we were referencing and what we were talking about. In that video, you can see those waves, pretty rocky, pretty rough, very uncommon to see for the Gulf, but we just wanted to show you that so you can see what we were referencing. But again, we'll continue to stay on top of this, on top of those storm surges here on the beach.
All right, thank you very much. Pipe bursts and water spewing out of a Naples neighborhood. Some of the first damage pictures we are seeing like that from Naples, and they really did take the brunt of the storm, and we are just beginning to see some of the damage coming out of some of the neighborhoods there. We'll have a much clearer picture once law enforcement can canvass the whole area and evaluate things.
Yeah, wind speeds, Jim showed us twice what they were roughly from Lee County to Collier County, and as he's explained a couple of times leading up to this hurricane, the force of wind is exponential, so twice the wind is 4 times the force when you look at how much it can damage buildings. And right there, I think we're seeing some of the evidence of that. I want to show you Lee Memorial on Fort Myers, and watch right there. There's a piece of the roof, according to the person who sent it to us, a piece of the roof flying off the trauma center. Hopefully, as far as we've heard, you know, roofs have lots of pieces that can be replaced. Not a critical part, but still, it's kind of scary to look at that.
Just lucky nobody was down.
Yeah, again, we are in Southwest Cape Coral near Tarpon Point Marina. We're in one of the neighborhoods here where you can see these winds are still very strong. The rain has died down. We stepped out for just a few minutes to give you guys some of the first looks at this damage, what people will be waking up to tomorrow morning. Right now, you're looking at a light pole. The covering for that light actually blown off in the wind. It's now shattered across this person's front yard. If we walk a little bit further down, you can see this branch of a tree just barely missing this car. We walked around the car. It does look like it's okay, but still, you can tell this is just giving you an indication how strong these winds are from Hurricane Irma here in Southwest Cape Coral. The worst of it's gone. We're still feeling these winds and still likely more damage to come from this. As we keep walking, if you look over this way, another tree. This tree sort of snapped in the middle. A few of the branches were cracked off, and I don't know if you guys can tell, it took down some wiring with it, and it's covering a sign over here. So this is going to be an issue for the homeowners here. A lot of cleanup that people are going to be dealing with tomorrow morning. And guys, this is just down the street from where we have been staying all afternoon. We stayed inside, and even further down, there's a tree blocking the road. So lots of damage just on this street in Southwest Cape Coral, and it's going to be a few hours, if not until tomorrow morning, before first responders can get out and start dealing with this, because as you can see, these winds still really gusting, and everybody's going to want to stay indoors and probably reassess in the morning and see what homeowners are going to be waking up to tomorrow. For now, in Cape Coral, Brooke Schaefer, Wink News Now.
Is that I just checked the floor.
Hello, I'm Wolf Blitzer, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thanks very much for joining us. We start with now Tropical Storm Irma still tearing through the southeast. More than 6 million homes and businesses are without power. We are also seeing record flooding in some areas, especially in northeastern Florida right now, right around Jacksonville. We're going to take you through the path of this storm and see community after community assessing the damage. The Florida Keys were the first to be hit by Hurricane Irma here in the United States. Right now, officials say the Keys are closed and that residents who evacuated should stay away while they assess the damage. Our Bill Weir rode out the storm in the Keys. He's in Key Largo for us right now. Bill, tell our viewers here in the United States and around the world what you've been seeing as you traveled through the Keys today.
Well, it's really interesting, Wolf. It depends on which side of the coastal highway, US 1, you go on. The folks on the bay side seem to have a much better go of it, got through it much better than those folks here on the Atlantic Ocean side. You're getting a sample of the damage as we have Coast Guard and naval helicopters making surveys up and down the coast. But I mean, it goes back to the old story of the big bad wolf, right? You know, it's no pun intended, wolf, but those who live in houses made of sticks or mobile homes of tin did not nearly fare as well as those who lived in the better constructed houses made of stone. But we're getting a sense here. This is a community of, how are you, sir? Good to see you. Make it through all right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? You all right? Just checking the damage. We're seeing a lot of mobile homes that have been torn apart. Here's a power line. Be careful, Rod. This is some of the most dangerous hazards is live electrical wires. You can hear them buzzing as we go around. And this is just one canal, a sample of the, this is a good, I would say, 300 yards from the coastline. And a lot of the debris just got pounded over here by the winds, the waves pushing, piles of rocks up against doors over on that side of the community. The good news is we get word from officials down in Key West, no fatalities reported. Miraculously, it's amazing, but they're worried about the humanitarian assistance that they're going to need. A lot of elderly and infirm that couldn't evacuate. They need food, they need fuel. They have a desalination plant down there and a generator. So even if they are cut off from the mainland in terms of those supplies, they can get by. But the destruction up here is nothing compared to what happened further down. If you know the Keys, you know that mile marker 0 is Key West, and it goes all the way up to like 125, I believe, as you get closer to Miami-Dade County. We're about 97. And this is a sort of a rough approximation of what we've been seeing up here. But the storm came ashore down around mile marker, I want to say, in the 30s, I believe. So we're in the process right now of securing a boat because we can't go by road down to the lower Keys. The Florida Department of Transportation says they want to survey all the bridges. There are some buckled roadways that they need to sign off on before they open it up to traffic. So that, as you can imagine, with 43 interconnected islands, that is a big job to inspect all of those bridges. So they're telling people, if you got a vacation plan down in the Keys, thanks for that, thanks for the thought, but you may want to postpone it for a while. And of course, there's a lot of folks who were on the line, Wolf, as to whether to evacuate or not. And this was their biggest concern, is that if they did evacuate, they couldn't get back home.
Does it look like most of the homes there, and you're in Key Largo, further south, it's obviously a lot worse. It looks like a lot of those homes were pretty much destroyed. Is that right?
Well, again, it comes down to what kind of construction. I mean, some of it is cosmetic, some of it is structural, depending on what it's made of. But if you look at a house like this one here, I'd hazard a guess that's probably built after Andrew when they toughened up the building codes, and it's on stilts, so you got a storm surge that can go under it, and strong, cement construction to survive it. A mobile home, different story.
Bill Weir on the seat for us. We'll stay in very close touch with you as you head south. Be careful over there. Let's move north right now. The storm is moving north. We're seeing some of the worst flooding around Jacksonville, Florida, the northern part of the state, where the storm surge has come ashore, putting streets and homes underwater. Our Kaylee Hartung is joining us live from Jacksonville right now. So, Kaylee, how bad is it?
Well, Wolf, it looks bad now. In downtown Jacksonville, we're about 2 blocks off of the St. Johns River in the middle of downtown. But I'll tell you, it is going to get worse. High tide coming at 2 p.m. They expect that storm surge that's already flooded these streets to bring waters 4 to 6 feet above high tide here. So as bad as this looks, it will get worse. Now, I am not willing to get in this water much deeper than my ankles. It's been interesting to me to see so many spectators. Look, you can see spectators here on dry ground checking out the scene down here. Despite these crazy wind gusts, we've even seen pickup trucks trying to drive into this. But what surprised me more than anything was Otis here, who we just saw walking through this water. Otis, how far did you walk through these waters?
Oh, I went from that bridge all the way down to here.
Why did you think that was a good idea? Was it out of necessity?
No, I'm just having fun. This hurricane season. You know what I'm saying? I just like to experience something, that's all.
Did you feel like you were ever unsafe out there? Were you ever concerned for your safety?
Oh, no, because this is the afterfest. The hurricane about gone, really.
They say these waters are going to continue rising. How high was the water as you walked through it?
Well, I'm going to say about 4 foot, about 3, 4 foot.
With high tide, they say the water could rise 2 or 3 more feet. We're not advocating for anybody to do what Otis did, but Otis, I'm glad you were able to make it through here safely. How long have you lived in the Jacksonville area?
Oh, pretty much all my life.
Have you ever seen anything like this or felt winds like this here?
Well, I've seen a lot of hurricanes in my lifetime.
Does this one feel different?
Yeah, I feel like it feel a little different. Yes, it do.
What makes it feel different? I mean, this is not something you're going to see every hurricane season with waters rolling up to downtown high-rises and hotels.
It feel like, it's heavy. It feel like, it's just windy and something like this, It's just a spin for me. I just can't explain it.
Well, please tell me you've got a safe way to get home that doesn't involve walking back through these floodwaters.
Oh, no, I got a safe place to go home. Okay. Yeah, I'm just having fun.
If you say so. If you say so, Otis, I'm so glad that you're safe. Well, if these winds continue to batter us here, I mean, we're looking at what's nearly white caps coming up as the St. Johns River flows through downtown Jacksonville. The fear that this water continues to rise. A couple of bridges, I should mention, in this area have reopened with traffic going both ways. It purely depends on the wind speeds there, but all bridges are open from the westbound side, letting anybody who stayed on those barrier islands like Jacksonville Beach or Ponte Vedra Beach, who tried to ride out the storm there, trying to get those people back to safety. Those westbound lanes are open. Rescues are underway in the Jacksonville area. Sheriff's Department saying they were out in boats this morning in water up to their waist trying to get people to safety, Wolf. But these winds continue to gust. I'm not wearing a rain jacket because there's rain falling out of the sky. I'm wearing a rain jacket to protect me from the spray of water we get as this wind flies up what's become a tunnel here on Hogan Street. And for anybody who's familiar with downtown Jacksonville, we're just a block off the corner of Water and Independence Streets. And the Landing just behind me on that opposite corner, very popular watering hole here. I'm not willing to do what Otis did and wade in this water, which would surely be above my waist, to find out if the Landing is flooded. But you can only imagine so many areas right on the banks of the St. Johns River in dire conditions. As we're looking at waters, let's see, three blocks from the banks here, flooded. Wolf will be standing by as tide continues to rise here.
And very quickly, Kaylee, were the folks in Jacksonville prepared? Were they told there would be this kind of very serious flooding?
It was really late yesterday when people started to recognize that this could be a place in danger. I've spoken to several people staying in the hotel. We're just outside of the Omni Hotel. People who had come here to find a safe place to be. They had come here from some of those barrier islands and beaches. I met two different families from Ponte Vedra Beach who were worried about their homes and thought that coming here to the middle of downtown Jacksonville would be safe. Right now, this is a place of utmost concern in the Jacksonville area, but no one I've spoken to here has felt like it will get much worse. And I think that's the concern now, is that people see these waters and it looks so bad now, but everyone from an official capacity saying that these waters over the next couple of hours will continue to rise with the storm surge.
Kaylee, thanks very much. Be careful over there. Kaylee Hartung in Jacksonville for us. In addition to assessing the damage from Irma, Florida has another major challenge right now. No power. More than 6.2 million people across the state are without power right now. Joining us, Rob Gould. He's the Vice President, Chief Communications Officer for Florida Power and Light. Rob, so what are you doing now to get power restored? How quickly will it take to get power restored?
Well, it's going to take quite a while. This is a storm that is affecting all 27,000 miles of our territory, 35 counties. We run from the Georgia line, just where you saw Jacksonville, that area. We're just south of Jacksonville, all the way down toward the Keys, and then we come back toward Tampa. And what we're seeing is that on the East Coast, we're still suffering the effects of the storm, obviously. So our crews can't even get out and restore power in that area. In the south, in the Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach areas, we're out in force today. We're assessing the damage. We have an army virtually of 19,500 restoration workers. It's the largest restoration worker force that we've put in place pre-storm, arguably in our company's history and probably in the country. And then as we look at the West Coast, we know they've seen some very significant damage. What we're thinking we're going to see on the West Coast could be and will likely be a rebuild effort that could take weeks. as opposed to the eastern side, which would be more of a restoration, a typical restoration, more along the type of days that you would see in a restoration after a storm like this.
So what are your biggest challenges right now?
The biggest challenge is what you just saw, the flooding. That is a real debilitator for us to get out there, for our crews to move around. We're also concerned about areas like the Tri-County area where traffic is congested on a good day. So we're going to be trying to move around as customers, as your viewers are moving back into the Tri-County area. I think the biggest concern we have is safety, safety for our crews and safety for your viewers and the residents. The floodwaters can be very dangerous. They can hide lines that can be energized. People that are walking through them can step on them. So it's a real concern that everybody practice safety. We are going to get through this, but this is no question going to be one of the largest and most complex restoration efforts in U.S. history, without question.
How do you prioritize restoring power right now, Rob?
The first thing we do is we make sure that the generating assets, the power plants, are all up and running and good to go. Once we get through that, then we look at the critical infrastructure. We're talking about hospitals. We're talking about police, fire, 911 centers, water treatment and sewer facilities. Then we look at the main trunk lines, if you will, the main lines, main thoroughfares, and where we try to get the most amount of customers back in as quickly as possible. And then we go into the neighborhoods, if you will, house to house. Now, we've invested some $3 billion over the past decade, and we've seen some significant benefits because of that investment and all of that innovation that we've put in. We've actually seen upwards of 1.5 million outages restored since the storm began. So that gives you a sense that investments in the infrastructure do work. But when you're talking about a storm of the magnitude of Irma coming onto shore, and then again facing all parts of our territory, this is a challenge we and others are going to have to really work through. And the best thing we can ask is that our customers just understand and be patient and be safe.
Well, we say be safe. What worries me, and I'm sure worries you and a lot of other folks, those power lines that are down, especially as you point out, in the water right now. How dangerous are they?
It's very dangerous. We don't have a good count yet because we are assessing the situation. That's the first step in all of this. So we're out assessing the southern part of our territory, Miami-Dade County, Broward, West Palm, the Treasure Coast. And we will work our way up to the northern part once the storm exits. Our crews can't fly their buckets in anything less than anything greater rather than 35 miles per hour. As far as the West Coast, we'll be doing the same thing. But it's not just the power lines, Wolf. It's also generator use. A lot of customers in Florida, a lot of your viewers have generators, and they use them. If they have generators, they need to put those in operation outside the garage, away from windows and doors. You know, the fumes for carbon monoxide can be absolutely deadly, and what we have found in restorations like this is most of the fatalities occur after the storm has passed, not during the storm. So people let their guard down, the weather gets nice, the sun comes out, and they feel like life's going to restore to normal pretty quickly. That is the most dangerous time, and we're asking people to actually stay off the road. The governor has been extremely forward-leaning in making sure that evacuations have been pushed forward. All local, state, and federal officials have been saying the same thing, and we're going to work with them. We're going to work with the community. We're going to get the lights back on as quickly as we can. But again, this is going to take some time. This is not going to be a typical restoration.
Yeah, certainly doesn't look like it. Rob Gould is the Vice President, Chief Communications Officer for Florida Power and Light. Rob, millions of people in Florida right now are counting on you guys. Good luck. We will, of course, stay in close touch with you. Thanks very much for that update. I want to check in right now on Florida's West Coast, where many people are assessing the damage from Irma. CNN's Diane Gallagher is joining us now from Bradenton, very close to Tampa Bay. What's happening where you are, Diane?
Yeah, well, Wolf, your last guest that you just spoke to there, speaking of all those power outages, a lot of it here in Bradenton is because of this. You can see behind me this massive uprooted tree. To give you some perspective, I'm almost 6 feet tall. You can see how large the root is with the pipe sticking out. There are kids playing on this right now. This family is one of so many that are here in this area in Bradenton trying to pick up the trees out of the road, get together, get their neighbors. We've seen the roofs and the carports ripped off of houses right now. Roughly half of Manatee County, which is where we are, is out of electricity right now, trying to get them turned back on. We've watched firefighters have to avoid these down trees because they still have so many live wires. In fact, they cannot get to Bradenton Beach, that island area, because of the live wires. They're not allowing anybody on there. I have Michelle with me right here, Wolfa. This is her home. You guys rode out the storm. What was it like for you? Were you scared? Was this what you were expecting?
Yes and no. It wasn't too scary for us. I mean, the kids were playing and running around, and we were watching outside. This was better than we expected. We didn't expect a tree, but we expected to flood. And it didn't, so that's a positive.
Now, when we first got here, this tree was all the way across this road, breaking out. We've been watching you, your neighbors, strangers, use chainsaws. You didn't have gas or oil. How did you guys get that to be able to get the tree out of the road?
You know, our driveway was blocked, and we posted on Facebook that we were in need of help, and people started showing up. They brought us gas and oil, and more people showed up with chainsaws. Neighbors came, and so within just a few hours, we had the whole road cleared and our driveway.
And thank you so much, Michelle. And this family is dealing with what a lot of others here are dealing with as well, Wolf. And that is because we're having sewer lines that are breaking. We have sewage that is flowing in the streets, mixing with some of this rainwater, some of the flood water. So they have a sewage problem. They have power problems. And of course, they have trees that they're trying to get down on their own right now. Technically, there was a curfew until 3 p.m. here in Bradenton that was set yesterday. But as you can see, there are plenty of cars that have been passing by, people trying to get an idea of just what the damage was overnight. Many of them feel spared, but look, Wolf, if you have a tree down in your front yard, it's a big deal. This is a personal problem for a lot of people. So they're just trying to assess what Irma did and just how much it's going to cost them and how long it's going to take to repair.
Yeah, you heard Rob Gould of the power company say it could take weeks, if not even longer, to get all that power restored on the western part of the state, maybe days on the eastern part, but we shall see. Diane Gallagher joining us. Miami Beach still prohibiting people from getting in as families are desperate to see their homes and their businesses. The mayor of Miami Beach is standing by live. We'll discuss. And there's still a threat of storm surge along the coast in Georgia and in South Carolina, as well as Irma makes its way north. This is CNN's special live coverage.
Homes underwater. The massive storm blamed for at least 25 lives across the Caribbean and 5 in Florida, including 2 police officers, as Hurricane Irma surges north. Its path of destruction now sparking rapidly rising, life-threatening water levels. Storm surges that could climb another 5 to 10 feet.
The surge is still ready to come, and we have not hit high tides.
There's a lot of unknowns, and that's what you worry about. Pray. I don't see prayer as a last resort. It should always be a first resort.
As Irma's multi-day siege rages on, we have live team coverage across the state of Florida. We begin in Naples, where people just got hammered by this storm, and 90% are waking up without power there. Griff Jenkins joins us live with the breaking details that are unfolding in that area. Griff?
Hey, Ainsley, good morning, guys. It is light finally coming up here, and we're just getting a look at what this was here in Naples, and that is a catastrophic wind event. Power lines, palm trees, and pools of standing water, some rising flooding, not necessarily storm surge, but certainly rising floodwaters are making the area treacherous as people wake up without power. I'll just give you a very quick look. You can see this shopping center, that sign knocked down, just debris everywhere. You look this way, and as we slowly turn around, these roads, which have palm trees and over there, the car going by, going slowly, this is actually pretty good. It looks like the police, which have a station just a block up the street, may have kind of cleared it some. It was quite an event. The challenge now, certainly that power, 90% of the residents in this area without power, and of course statewide with more than 50% of Floridians without power. But the experience itself was quite terrifying. We spoke to a young man, a college senior named Jack Luganbuhl. He was with his parents, and he tried to do everything he could during those harrowing moments. Take a listen.
There was a solid probably like 15 minutes where it was beating on the window, where me and my dad were just standing there. And the only reason we stopped is because it got to the point where we felt it beating so hard that, okay, we're just going to leave the room, close the door, and hope nothing happens.
This story is still unfolding. Things are raw here. People are going to get out and try and find things. We just encountered a man trying to go to his business, walking on the road. We talked to him. We'll bring that to you in the next hour. But people are waking up to a lot of shock and a lot of devastation. Untold how much it's going to be. We're going to try and get around and get a better look. The good news is, if there had to be some, it seems the storm surge was perhaps in the range of a couple of feet, as opposed
we've already seen coming out of cars like this. People have been coming out from shelters just to survey the damage. Take a look. This is what streets are looking like when they come see it. Just impassable. This is what is happening in all the suburbs, really, along Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. 58% of the state without power. 58% of its residents without power this morning. Just astounding. And really, Miami may not have been as hard hit or close to the eye, but we got hit hard, despite the fact that the eye did not go through here. Again, we had power lines down, water 3 feet high in Brickell Avenue in downtown, cranes collapsing, at least 2 in Miami and another in Fort Lauderdale. And, you know, we also had panels flying off of buildings post-storm. And on top of all of that, we've seen police patrols in neighborhoods to try to stop looters. Looters caught on video trying to get into a Foot Locker. Another 28, according to Miami Police Department, 28 looters have been arrested so far this morning. As remember, right to your point, so many hundreds of thousands, millions of people were evacuated and just trying to find a way to come back into town. But the problem is that they're coming in with the light and realizing that there are down trees. Actually, behind Guy, you see that tree over there? That entire road is blocked. So neighborhoods are now becoming really hard minefields to get through right now. And so that's the situation here in Florida, guys. And to one last point, I just wanted to just extend a thank you. We have a smudge on our camera because we've been out in hurricane coverage for 2 or 3 days now. And my photographer, Guy Hernandez, came all the way from Houston coverage for a couple weeks and came straight down here to Florida to join me. Big thanks to him and Whitney Shazik, who rode out her first hurricane outside in the hurricane. So extremely brave of her as well. And all of the people at Fox, the hundreds of people behind the scenes that made it happen.
Hey, Brian, you know what you Beach. What's going on there?
We're still dealing with tropical force winds and pounding rain here. We are in high tide. The water behind me inching closer, but as you can see, we have not witnessed, and we're probably not going to see any catastrophic storm surge here, which is excellent news for people in this area. This was a part of the mandatory evacuation zone. We've been here now for about 24 hours and very little humans in sight. People abided by the evacuation. In fact, one of the fire chiefs here is saying that people evacuated so well they were able to do it.
People in before, but we're going to let them know if we can. Otherwise, it's 12 o'clock tomorrow afternoon because we need to make it safe. It's so important. I mean, can you imagine? We've kept people safe in preparation. We kept them safe during the storm. We need to keep them safe in the recovery effort.
How much power is out right now in Miami Beach? Are street lights, for example, working?
It really depends, Wolf, on what section of the city. It's very, very spotty. There are certain areas that have power now, certain areas that don't. Just got off a call with the president of FP&L, Florida Power and Light, and they're working diligently. But as you know, there's millions of people in Florida right now that are without power. So this is stretching the resources of FP&L dramatically. They're bringing in people from all across the country to help them take care of what's happening in Florida.
But are there power lines down in Miami Beach that potentially could be very dangerous?
Absolutely. I saw them early this morning. I saw them last night. And we see FP&L crews there, along with our first responders, our public works teams, our fire departments that have gone incredible beyond the call of duty in order to secure these power lines to make sure that, God forbid, no one can get hurt. And that's one of the main reasons why we can't have people back in Miami Beach until we are able to secure it.
So what are your biggest challenges right now?
Well, I can tell you this. The good news is this. we have invested a tremendous amount of money in making our city resilient. We've been raising roads, putting in pumps, putting in generators, because we've been fighting back against sea level rise. It's been our big issue in Miami Beach, even during sunny days. And what we found is during this historic high tide that we experienced with this tidal surge, all those areas we improved were absolutely dry. So for us, we were very excited. It was a success. But once again, you know, you never declare victory against Mother Nature. We have years and years to go, and I think it's a model for other cities. They need to invest in coastal cities to make them resilient, because these weather events, they may have been an abnormality, but for the future, I think they're the new normal.
Mayor Philip Levine is the mayor of Miami Beach. Good luck, Mayor. Good luck to all the folks in Miami Beach. We're going to be staying in close touch with you as well. There are some new pictures coming in from the coast right now, a high risk of storm surge in cities like Charleston and Savannah, where Irma is lashing right now. Take a look at this. Also, some tragic pictures of complete devastation across the Caribbean, homes destroyed, people suffering very much so, still stranded right now. We'll take you there. Stay with us.
Go through high tide earlier this morning, and of course, you know, all we've been talking about is the storm surge, and you heard Janice mention the storm surge over and over again this morning as well. So if this area is going to flood, it's going to be because of this right here. So we're keeping an eye on it. But I want to actually show you guys video that we shot yesterday. If we can take a look at that. It's from the Bay, and I posted it on Twitter. It went crazy viral because people could not believe what they were looking at. The Bay was dry. I mean, and not just a small portion of it, a lot of it. And I called Janice yesterday and I said, please explain to me what is going on, because people were walking around saying, I've never seen anything like this here before. And Janice said because of the way, the direction of the winds from Irma, it was pushing everything out of the bay, and that water obviously now back in here. So the concern at this point is going to be flooding. We've seen a little bit of localized flooding this morning, just on street corners, things like that. Nothing too major, but we're going to keep an eye on this, because as people wake up this morning, they could still be seeing some flooding. Even though it hasn't happened yet, it doesn't mean it's not going to. So guys, will certainly keep you posted on that. And the winds are picking up a lot. It's been kind of off and on throughout the morning, but it's raining and it's still windy here in Tampa. I'll send it back to you.
And Jillian, you know what? I'm watching it go up just in your conversation. Now the waves are getting high, going through the barrier there.
Yes, they are. If you can go ahead and go off me there and just show that. We are starting to just see in the last maybe 20 minutes some waves crashing up here. And yesterday I talked to a resident who was out walking his dog, and he said, you know, I've seen waves come up here high. So that's not unexpected. That's not unusual in this area. The problem is with the storm surge, you just don't know how much you're going to get right now.
That's the big question. All right, Jillian, thank you very much. Jeff Flock is live in Madeira Beach, which is not far from where she has been standing. And Jeff, we've had some problems with your microphone. We're hoping this goes okay.
Yeah, we're the old-fashioned way. We got cable here. You know, the cable always works. You know, that'll cure the problem. None of this wireless stuff. I was listening to what Jillian had to say about, you know, the water out and now back. I'm going to give you a perspective of that. That's why I'm walking up here to the top. Now we got sun up a little bit, and you can see that's the Gulf. This is the pass. This is just one of the means by which the water comes past the barrier islands into the bays of Tampa Bay and the rest. Now that water that was washing out is now in the process of washing back, and it's kind of washing machine effect. You can see some of it crashing against the rocks here. Other of the water, you can see the current moving back in. The question is, you know, how much water gets pushed back into the storm? Hopefully not too much, but it still remains to be seen. We're now at about the kind of levels that you would typically see on a typical day. The question is, does this water get pushed enough to cause flooding? Even if it does, hopefully not as much as we would have expected. So probably still first responders out. I want to let you know, by the way, these guys never came off. The guys in Madeira Beach, they continued to patrol all night.
Is that a ghost town, Jeff?
Oh, yeah. Bobby, can you come this way? If you hang your, see, we got cable now. This is like the old days. If Bob's able to hang his head out the side, do you see anything there? Not a doggone thing. That's that place over there has a big generator. Beach Place has a generator. That's the only power that you see. Occasionally somebody will have a generator and you can see that, but beyond that, total ghost town. That's off to the left, Bob. That's Treasure Island over there. This bridge joins the two. That also ghost town. You know, when you're on a barrier island here, you know, if you're in Tampa, you might say, oh, I think I'll stick it out. If you're on a barrier island, you're saying, you know what? We'll come back on a nicer day.
You know, even in a hurricane, the place is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I know the surge continues, but I was expecting, Jeff, to see just all of those roads, all of those docks completely underwater. I was expecting to see a lot.
South Georgia is now starting to get hit by Tropical Storm Irma. Thousands have already lost power. Much of Florida is left with the aftermath. Billions of people in Florida without power, fallen trees, down power lines, flooded roadways across the state. CNN has been tracking this monster storm every step of the way. Let's check in with our meteorologist, Allison Chinchar. She's live from the CNN Weather Center. Allison, so what are the big concerns right now and what's next for Irma?
Right, so the biggest concerns for Irma are going to be in this region right here, stretching from Charleston down towards Jacksonville, Florida. This is where we still have relatively high surge, very heavy rainfall, in addition to strong winds. And also, this is where our biggest threat for tornadoes is currently located. But you have to understand where the storm came from to know what to expect going forward. Look at some of the amounts of rain that have already been dropped in portions of Florida. Fort Pierce picking up nearly 16 inches of rain. Gainesville picking up over a foot. Naples, nearly a foot of rain. In addition to that, look at some of the areas of Georgia already, and it really just recently started to rain there. Kingsland, Georgia, picking up over 10 inches of rain already. Homeland, just about 8 inches of rain. And you have to keep in mind, for Georgia, the rain is still coming and likely will for the next several hours. So those numbers are going to go up. In terms of wind speed, we're not likely going to see numbers like this going forward, but they're still very impressive nonetheless. Naples picking up a wind gust of over 140 miles per hour. Marco Island picking one up at 130 miles per hour. Storm surge is still a concern for portions of Florida right now, mostly on the western coast of Florida. The highest being the region north of Tampa as you push in towards the Panhandle. But even around Tampa and Fort Myers, you could be looking at 2 to 4 feet or 3 to 5 feet, respectively. We're also talking about the region on the east. We talked about it, Charleston down through Jacksonville. We could be looking at storm surge in some of these areas of 4 to 6 feet. And again, in addition to that, we also have the concern of heavy rain, because that's where some of the heaviest rain bands are right now, is portions of southern South Carolina and southeastern Georgia. These red squares right here, those are the flood emergencies that we have. Flash flood threat still remains for those boxes, as well as the pink indicating a tornado warning. And that's going to be the case for much of the day today, where we have the potential for severe weather stretching from Wilmington, North Carolina down through Savannah, Georgia. The main threats are going to be damaging wind and, yes, the potential for some tornadoes throughout that region as the system moves north. We have a pretty intense amount of shear in this location. On the good side, that's helping to rip Irma apart layer by layer. The downfall is where, Wolf, that same shear is what's ramping up the threat for tornadoes for some of those states.
All right, Allison, thank you very much. Allison Chinchar with the latest on Irma. We originally feared the worst for the southeastern part of Florida. Tens of thousands fled areas like Miami and West Palm Beach, expecting to bear the brunt of the catastrophic storm. Our John Berman is joining us now live from Miami. John, just a few minutes ago, the mayor of Miami Beach told me that they didn't just dodge a bullet, they dodged a cannon. Is it a similar story in Miami where you are?
It certainly isn't as bad as it could have been, Wolf, but that doesn't mean that there's no damage. I'm standing at a marina near Monty's, which a lot of people will know in the Miami area, Coconut Grove, and you can see this boat, for instance, is supposed to be in the water. It was pushed up here on shore. That boat right there is supposed to be in the water, not tipped over. You can see that sailboat to the left there. It's a mess. One of the things that happened here is it appears one of the large boats in the marina simply broke free and swept in with that storm surge, pushing everything up here on shore. People have been texting me all morning. They knew we were in Miami, saying you got to get over to Coconut Grove if you want to see real damage from the storm. You know, they did have storm surge in downtown Miami as well, Wolf. You know, Brickell, the neighborhood there, Brickell Ave, 4 to 6 feet of water of storm surge covering that road. It's gone now. The good news is it has drained out. Miami trying to get back on its feet. Schools closed indefinitely in both Miami-Dade County and Broward County. A couple reasons. They need to check and make sure they're structurally sound, and some are still being used as shelters. No word yet when they'll be up and running. 60% of power lights, traffic lights, I should say, still down in Miami. I haven't seen one working yet, so 60% to me seems a pretty conservative estimate. The power has started to come back on in dribs and drabs in Miami-Dade. This morning, it was about 900,000 people without power. It's come down a little bit. A few tens of thousands or so have had their power restored. And the power companies out there trying as fast as they can, Wolf, to get back up and running. So the mayor of Miami Beach, Phil Levine, who you know, said they may have dodged a bullet. Dodging a bullet, you know, if it's this bad when you dodge a bullet, imagine what would have happened had it been a direct hit from a Category 4 storm Irma, which was the fear when they ordered those initial mandatory evacuations of this area, Wolf.
That area where you spent a lot of time on Brickell Avenue in downtown Miami, the financial area, an area well known to a lot of our viewers. It was flooded heavily, but you say it's now drained, but it still looks disgustingly dirty. How long is it going to take to clean up that area so people can feel comfortable once again going out there and walking around?
Well, look, you know, what was Brickell Ave yesterday became Brickell River, and today is Brickell Dirt Road. It is covered with mud and debris. We got there early this morning before dawn, and it was an empty ghost town. But then as the day progressed, people came out to check and see how it was. There are a lot of folks out on the streets right now, what the mayor referred to as hurricane tourists, disaster tourists. He doesn't want people out until they know it's safe to go home. But people are very, very determined to clean that area up as quickly as they can to get it back up and running. I had people shouting to me from their car windows as they were driving by saying, hey, our office is still open. You know, tell everyone to come to my bank. They can still deposit their money here. It's all fine. So they'll get back up and running soon. The floodwaters did drain out. It'll just be some dirty, mucky cleanup, Wolf.
A lot of work to be done, not just there in Miami, but all over the state. John Berman doing excellent, wonderful reporting for all of our viewers. John, thank you very, very much. New pictures, by the way, coming into the massive destruction in the Caribbean, where Irma made a direct hit, including in St. Martin, where survivors say all the food is gone. Plus, back in Florida, we're live near Fort Myers, where CNN's Brian Todd is seeing lots and lots of damage. We'll go to Brian after this.
Built structures. So very early in the damage assessment here, for the most part, outside of critical infrastructure in Fort Myers proper, they were waiting until daylight, and that's only been in the last half hour. So we are now starting to see a lot of equipment, a lot of emergency crews getting into place to start trying to figure out how bad Irma really was.
All right, Chris Van Cleve, thank you so much. We're going to bring in...
And so let's now take you to our Miami station, WFOR. They've been doing a lot of the heavy lifting covering this because it is obviously their backyard. Let's go ahead and listen into their coverage.
See what's going on here and just take a look. This is Treasure Island. And we really haven't seen a lot of police officers clearing the road. It was just that one in North Miami Beach, but I'm sure that now that the sun has come up, we will definitely be seeing a lot more of them.
And Maribel, just talk about some of the conditions you encountered. I know you've been driving around there in that northeastern part of the county there, but tell us what you were dealing with as you made your way from the northwestern part here in Doral, and you had to cross over. It looks like you're running into some flooding there, so be careful.
Yeah, there's a bump here. There's a bump here on the road. So it's kind of like dodging a lot of trees and debris, and that's why you have to be very careful. But we drove from Doral, and we first drove to North Miami Beach, 826, I-95, completely isolated, which is great because obviously it was still under the curfew. Then we went to Aventura. We went to Aventura Mall. They were clearing the storm drains there. Still a lot of downed trees. As far as businesses, we haven't seen any businesses open. We drove by the Publix in Miami Shores. That is still closed. And we also went by a trailer park. We sent that video earlier. I don't know if you were able to turn it around to show it to our viewers. But, yeah, I mean, just a lot of water everywhere. And here there is still some water.
Yeah,
I want to say maybe like 1 to 2 feet of water in this area.
Yeah, you could tell by looking at the tires on that car how high up it comes. And we've seen some cars as you drive around also out there. Have you seen any people, just out of curiosity, walking around? I imagine that this was part of the area that was evacuated for the storm.
Well, you see, there's a resident right there. I don't know if she stayed or if she's just getting home. It seems she's assessing the damage, but you can tell that the water. Look at the water line on the garage. I don't know if you can see from here where it went up. I would say maybe like 2 feet of water. Hi, good morning. We're with Channel 4. Everything is okay? Everything is okay? She says everything is okay in her home.
That's certainly good news there. Maribel, I just want to let you know we did get some word from North Bay Village Emergency Manager Evelyn Urbello. She said that North Bay Island's pretty much all flooded. No streets are passable. That's how it was described. I see that you're driving around in that area right now. Harbor Island East Drive is passable. West Drive is not. Also saying that Treasure Island South and Treasure Drive completely flooded. Adventure and Hispaniola Avenue.
Right now.
Yeah, and that's flooded as well. And East Treasure Drive partially flooded. Now, North Bay Village wants to know and let all the general employees know, with the exception of those who have been notified. They don't want them to report to work today because of the conditions you are seeing. So we just want to let the people of North Bay Village, anyone who works there in that community for the city, or to not show up to work unless you're one of those essential employees that was already told that you need to show up.
And that's typically how it happens. The essential employees are the ones that are given that call to show up, and the rest are being asked not to go to work.
I think that's a great idea. Because by the conditions here, we're seeing a resident here. Let me try to stop and see how she's doing. Hi, good morning. We're with Channel 4. How's everything? Are you just coming coming home now? Everything's okay? Everything. We're with Channel 4, yeah. She says she lives down the street and everything is okay. She's assessing the damage here. See the water here?
She's assessing the damage from Irma's path of destruction. These are just some of the new pictures we're getting in from Bonita Springs, Florida. That's just south of Fort Myers. You can see the massive flooding, a community just inundated with water. Brian Todd is on the scene for us. Brian, tell our viewers what you're seeing.
Wolf, a lot of damage, a lot of significant flooding in this neighborhood. We just went back into this area here. These streets behind me are all flooded, some of them in water as deep as I'm in and even deeper. This is called the Imperial Bonita Estates neighborhood behind me. A lot of mobile homes back here. They were almost all flooded out. Many of these residents were told evacuated. But when we came in here just about an hour or so ago, we met up with a caretaker, a person who is a caretaker. She and her husband are caretakers of this whole subdivision here. And they were very worried about an elderly couple back here that they couldn't get to. This couple lives about a mile into the neighborhood, and you have to really walk through water like this to get to their mobile home. They said that this couple had not left. They gave us their names, Edith and Ed Nalepa. She is 88 years old. He's 93. We walked back into that neighborhood, Wolf, about a mile. And again, it was water like this, and almost every home was flooded. Again, most of the people evacuated. These people elected not to leave. We actually found their mobile home. We found them inside it. They were fine. They said that they just didn't feel like they could leave because the gentleman is 93 years old. His wife is about 88. He had Parkinson's disease and he has diabetes. It would be too difficult to move him, and so they refused help. But the caretakers and other neighbors here were incredibly worried about them. Luckily, they are safe. But again, that scene plays out throughout this area. We talked to the sheriff's department here in Bonita Springs. They don't even have an assessment of this damage yet, Wolf, and they couldn't give us much information. They do say their sheriff's deputies are out here scouring these areas, trying to find out if anybody needs help. So again, we're just kind of, we wake up this morning and we talk about some of these areas that we're just now learning about the flooding, about the damage. And we're just kind of getting the scope of it here in the early afternoon after the storm hit. I think I heard you and John Berman talking a little bit ago about the toxicity and just the dirty water. Well, that's a big hazard here as well. We walked through this stuff to get to these people's house. And, there was oil all over the place. There was all sorts of other chemical material, trash floating around. it's really kind of unhealthy here, and so that's something that people have to contend with. They also have to contend with scenes like this behind me. This massive tree fell down and just clipped off a power line. So, you know, as this place digs out, it tries to come out, and everybody tries to get up and running again, crews are going to have to come here and deal with scenes like this, Wolf. We're told that as of now, about 3 million customers in Florida are still without power.
Yeah, it's an awful situation. Those down power lines, those flooded streets, that is a prescription for potentially lots of disaster. Brian, stay careful over there. We'll get back to you, Brian Todd, on the scene, as he always is. We're starting to get our first look at the massive destruction Irma left behind in the Florida Keys. Joining us on the phone right now, Monroe County Commissioner Heather Carruthers. Heather, you evacuated the Keys to Orlando with your family, but you're very much involved with emergency management. You're in close touch with folks down in the Keys. What are you hearing, Heather, about the damage there? Where is the worst of it? What's the latest?
Well, the Keys, as you know, is a long string of islands. There's 120 islands, and we took a really serious punch here. It seems like the bulk of the worst of the damage seems to be in the lower and middle Keys. The eye of the storm crossed over Cojo Key, which is about 20 miles east of Key West. And we know that there was a lot of storm surge in that area up through Marathon. We have no cell service in the Keys right now, no electricity, no water. So we're just, dealing with satellite phones and those landlines that are working to try to get some information out. That area of the Keys seems to be the hardest hit. Key West fared better than I think Key West thought it was going to fare. The word is that the storm surge was not as significant there as it was in Wilma, and there does not seem to be any serious structural damage done in Key West. We are so thankful for the support we've gotten from our state and federal partners. We have aircraft coming in, and National Guard is already there. We have about 35 trucks coming in from Jacksonville to help restore power. We've got a naval aircraft carrier coming in this afternoon, and 3 more ships coming in. Salvation Army, Red Cross, everybody's really working hard to pull us back together. We've been through storms before. This, of course, is the most significant one, the most serious storm since we've really settled the Keys. But we're going to get back to it, and we're going to get back up probably quicker than we had initially anticipated because of all the support we've been getting.
We're told that there are search and rescue teams already on the scene in the Keys. What can you tell us about casualties or any bad news along those lines?
We know that there will be some loss of life. We don't have any counts yet. I don't think it's going to be that significant because a lot of people did evacuate, but we had 2 fatalities in the midst of the storm, but we don't even know if those were storm-related, frankly. One was an automobile accident, and then someone passed away of natural causes in one of our shelters. But we do know that there are other people who tried to ride out this storm, and surge probably caught them. I don't have any numbers yet, but obviously that's a major concern. So the National Guard is doing its, and the Coast Guard are both starting to do search and rescue.
It certainly is a top priority. Heather Carruthers, good luck to you. Good luck to all the folks in the Keys. We're going to stay in close touch with all of them, as many of them as we possibly can. We're standing by the way, for a flyover, getting our first look. Some of the areas hit hardest in Florida. We'll have that for you. There's still a threat of storm surge along the coast in Georgia and South Carolina as Irma makes its way north right now. This is CNN's special live coverage.
Officers into the streets to rescue people because it's just too dangerous. The fire chief saying one of the hardest things, the most difficult thing for him is to tell his guys you can't go out and do your job that you're trained to do because it's just too dangerous. So for people in this area who did not heed the evacuation warnings, the mayor and fire and police warning you to stay inside even though the sun is coming up. Don't step outside right now. This is some of the strongest winds we have seen since we've been here. Janice was mentioning those onshore winds, and that's what we're seeing right now here in St. Pete. Back to you guys in New York.
All right, Matt, thank you very much. Let's go to the other side of the state right now, our affiliate WFOS. A reporter is doing a live shot right now. I think we're going to listen in for just a moment in Jacksonville.
downtown Jacksonville that we see as of right now. Now, one of the things we do know is because of the storm surge, it is truly at a record high, and it's something that has beat Hurricane Dora, which was in 1964. It's kind of baffling to think about that literally part of the rainwater from the St. Johns River is now flooding downtown Jacksonville. And just to let you know, I know you're not here, so it's hard to kind of smell, but my photographer, Steve, and I recognize that we think there must be an issue because we can definitely smell sewage at this point, so we're probably going to leave this area really soon because we don't know what's in this water, but there's debris and all sorts of different items that we've seen just walking over here to bring you this live coverage. We've seen branches, everything from signs, and it also smells like there's also waste in this area. Reporting in downtown Jacksonville, Caitlin Chana, CBS 47, Fox 30.
All right, great.
Boulevard. Tell us about where you are and what's happening there.
We're in Tampa. We're on Bayshore Boulevard and Delaware Avenue. And take a look back here at the bay because it's getting pretty rough out here. And I'll tell you guys, just from eyeballing it, we've seen the water rise about 1.5 feet in the last few hours. We did go through high tide earlier this morning. And, of course, you know, all we've been talking about is the storm surge. And you heard Janice mention the storm surge over and over again this morning as well. So if this area is going to flood, it's going to be because of this right here. So we're keeping an eye on it. But I want to actually show you guys video that we shot yesterday. If we can take a look at that. It's from the bay. And I posted it on Twitter. It went crazy viral because people could not believe what they were looking at. The bay was dry. I mean, and not just a small portion of it, a lot of it. And I called Janice yesterday and I said, please explain to me what is going on, because people were walking around saying, I've never seen anything like this here before. And Janice said because of the way, the direction of the winds from Irma, it was pushing everything out of the bay. And that water obviously now back in here. So the concern at this point is going to be flooding. We've seen a little bit of localized flooding this morning, just on street corners, things like that. Nothing too major, but we're going to keep an eye on this because as people wake up this morning, they could still be seeing some flooding. Even though it hasn't happened yet, it doesn't mean it's not going to. So guys, will certainly keep you posted on that. And the winds are picking up a lot. It's been kind of off and on throughout the morning, but it's raining and it's still windy here in Tampa. I'll send it back to you.
And Jillian, you know what? I'm watching it go up just in your conversation. Now the waves are getting high, going through the barrier there.
Yes, they are. If you can go ahead and go off me there and just show that. We are starting to just see in the last maybe 20 minutes some waves crashing up here. And yesterday I talked to a resident who was out walking his dog, and he said, you know, I've seen waves come up here a couple feet high. Yeah. So that's not unexpected. That's not unusual in this area. The problem is with the storm surge, you just don't know how much you're going to get right now.
That's the big question. All right, Jillian, thank you very much. Jeff Flock is live in Madeira Beach, which is not far from where she has been standing. And Jeff, we've had some problems with your microphone. We're hoping this goes okay.
Yeah, we're the old-fashioned way. We got cable here. You know, the cable always works. Yeah, that'll cure the problem.
Force and power. And believe it or not, we are still feeling the after effects of Irma. It's putting on quite a show here on the Havana seafront. Just yesterday, Wolf, this whole area would have been underwater. The ocean came racing in, flooded the homes that you see behind me. People have taken all their possessions out to dry them off. A lot of people had to go up to neighbors' homes to get through the storm because they said they had never seen in years of living through these storms, a storm come in and fill up their homes with 1-2 feet of water. So it was destructive even as far away as Havana. The government has been clearing debris, trying to restore electricity. Of course, had that sad news today that 10 people had died, 10 Cubans had died in the storm. That is a lot for Cuba, a country that prides itself on its hurricane preparation. So obviously there's a lot to learn from the way this very, very powerful storm has ravaged Cuba over the last few days. But at least now, Wolf, the sun is out and the recovery process has begun.
When you say the recovery process, it's going to be an enormous amount of reconstruction, right?
Absolutely. You know, you talked about buildings collapsing. Now is the time, actually, when it gets even more dangerous. The sun comes out, it dries some of these waterlogged buildings. And a lot of times, you know, some of these buildings behind me are hundreds of years old. They have not been maintained. And when after a storm, the sun comes out, dries them out, sometimes